meeting in Richmond County. Richmond County had always had the worst part of the least number of visitors who came. There were good solid reasons for that, not the least of which was they weren't organized. They were still in the, fighting each other kind of mode. So we sat down with them, had a whole bunch of people in the room, and we spent most of the day sorting out what would make Richmond County work in terms of the festival. Then we left, they got together on their own after that, and last 2 years now, they have had absolutely fabulous responses in their own areas. The hotels have been full, people are enjoying being in that part of the island, and so on. So, we are known, therefore, to be well governed. We defend our brand very closely, and we have some foreign funding. Believe it or not, the Irish have given us money for the last 2 years because they see, it's substantial money, not diddly money, because they see that it benefits their artists, either because their artists are coming or because they feel that so many people come to Celtic Colors and there's such a large media buyers program at Celtic Colors that sort of gives a lot of extra edge to the whole thing in terms of them giving some support. And so the media buyers program has been particularly key. They also tell us that we collect a lot of data so they know what we've done with their money in terms of actual impact. And we do collect a lot of data. I'll come to that very briefly in a moment. So let's move through a couple of them. So I want to go back to there. Okay, last sort of how-to kind of thing, marketing initiatives. Here's where we made mistakes. We did in other places too, but here especially. Our early focus was on general media. How do you advertise a festival? Why you advertise newspapers, magazines, radio, television, blah, blah, blah. We spent a lot of money, but without what we thought was sufficiently good return. But there weren't many other options in those days. But as the festival progressed, one of the things we began doing is collecting a lot of information from our customers. So we do big surveys every year. It's about a 5-page survey. We hardly ever have anybody turn us down. And the reason is we recruit slaves. And our slaves are high school students and university students who dress as we suggest that they dress, take out the nose rings, and we send them out with golf pencils and the surveys before the concerts begin when people are in their seats. And they explain, they're a student at Nova Scotia Community College, at Straight Campus, or at Dalbury Academy, or at Breton University, and they're doing this as part of their coursework. Would you nice people kind of agree to fill out the forms? Well, they do. In fact, we've often had situations where people have asked for more forms than we've had, because of course we're only sampling, part of an audience. That's held us in really good stead. On various situations over the years, for a long time we had problems convincing senior governments that cultural tourism was a phenomenon. And so they would consistently tell us, oh, people are only here because they want to see the fall colors, which are so beautiful, and while they're here, they're just doing the music thing. I said, well, funny. Before this festival happened, after the Labor Day weekend, you could starve to death driving the Cap Trail, because everything had closed after the Labor Day weekend. Now, the institutions are all open until mid-October or late October. And for the last 4 years, those 2 months have been, late September to late October, have been the heaviest tourist season months of the year in Cape Breton, and especially at the time when summer visitors were declining and U.S. visitors were declining. Last year, we outperformed the province and every other event for American visitors and foreign visitors. Okay, so we're heading into social media. You can read that in the article. A couple of quick things on impacts. We've changed the tourism season, as I just said, and we've broadened it and deepened it, especially now that we have all of these community events. And if somebody asks me a question about contracting, I'll try to answer that, because that's been part of the key to it. But I'm aware that Yolanda is there with her ready to hit me in the shins pretty soon here. There have been a lot of general economic benefits, cash, employment skills. We bring in about $5.5 million new dollars, no multiplier effect, in that 9 days. Because they stay an average of 5 to 7 days, they spend more money each day. Summer tourists is there for 2 or 3 days. Often they brought the food in the cooler with them. You can't do that at Celtic Colors. Doesn't work that way. You're usually flying in. So on a multiplier basis, Enterprise Cape Breton tells us it brings in about $15.5 million in that 9-day period. So one of the larger island businesses. And bless their hearts, they stand up and say that we have given the best return on investment of anything they've done in the last 10 years. So, community industry impacts. We have seasonal migration now. Several people who've come have bought property and now come and spend the summer and stay into the fall if they have the ability to do that in terms of retirement. We've developed a culture of evidence-based decision-making, and that has been huge. We make everything on data that we gather when we go out and we research it. That makes such a difference in dealing with communities or dealing with government or dealing with corporate sponsors. Music industry effects. Now a lot of people in Cape Breton who live there year-round who are living by the music. Before we had Celtic Colors, there were no recording studios and no sound technicians on the island. There are now 3 viable recording studios who draw artists from internationally, and a whole crew of sound techs, some of whom have gotten jobs off the island based on the volunteer training that they got from the Celtic Colors. Our Drivers Association. Again, you can ask me some questions about this one later. This is an example of the volunteers. We've got a core of about 35 drivers who are our logistical instruments, and they're fabulous. It's a really complicated logistical structure when you're doing concerts all over the island. There's a lot of algorithms. We have a huge database that we use for programming and also for scheduling the drivers. 2004, they finally decided to form themselves an association because they had so much esprit de corps. They got their own uniforms. They have their own behavioral code, and they sell after the concert and during the intermission the CDs for the artists that they call to that particular site, and they get to keep 10% of that for their fund. They also do a few driving things during the year, and then they, out of what they've earned, they give a scholarship annually to a young musician who has proved that they are ready to do a recording but don't have the money to do it. So they sponsor the first CD, for that particular artist. Very well received kind of thing. The funny thing that has also happened as a result of the driver effects, they've changed the taxi industry in Cape Breton. Our taxi industry used to be characterized by dirty cars, drivers who looked like they woke up too late that morning to get everything done before they got into the car. And it wasn't a very impressive thing. And every so often a municipal councilor would get up and make a speech, but nothing happened. Well, the drivers started showing up for the cruise ships, the Celtic Colors drivers, because they were requested to take people on tours. And there they'd be in their spiffy uniforms and shaved, and the cars would be clean and everything. The taxis were outraged. But there wasn't much they could do about it because the drivers were putting it all in the community fund. So what has happened gradually is new fleets. The drivers are looking spiffier, so we have a much better taxi system, and everybody credits it to Celtic Colors drivers. Okay, finally, just a couple of words on challenges. Revenue generation. We'll come back to it in contracting if there's time in the questions. We don't keep the money, except, very basic. We give away 20% of the net profits to the host communities. We do all of the community event for the concerts. We do all of the community events, advertising, training, the whole 9 yards. We don't take any of the money. That's part of why it continues to work. And every year we do zero-based competition. You had a concert last year, you're not necessarily entitled to one this year. And if you keep violating your contract, we'll pull your concerts. We did that with one extremely well-known community a few years ago. Great reputation for Celtic music, but we said, you haven't been delivering on the contract in the following weeks, so you aren't getting a concert this year. Great Russians. But they cleaned up their act, they're back in the business. So it's shown people that if you cooperate and collaborate, there can be, you know, good success. But everybody is seen to benefit. Everybody wants in the tent, not outside the tent, because the communities make good money off of us. You make the best money if you have something else while you're having a concert. Maybe you're having a square dance afterward, you're having a little lunch. See, they keep all the bar and the food. We gotta be the only festival in the world that gets none of the bar and food. But if we took the bar and food, we'd have been dead years ago. Because nobody would have volunteered, nobody would have wanted to be involved, because we would be hogging the money. So it's a solution that works for us. You may not have that problem in your community, but we were very careful about setting up the contract in a way that it persuaded people that it was a good thing to do to play nicely. Final thing besides revenue generation is succession issues. Key man staff positions. One of our key staff has already moved on, retired to go back to doing some other things in the private sector and start another company. The other director is 65. Eventually she's going to want to, you know, mosey down the road to retirement, but we're hoping that's going to be gradual. But ECBC, bless their hearts, gave us money a couple of years ago so that we could hire a mentoree for her. Because she's really the kingpin. She's the artistic director. So we've had a mentoree. This is now her 3rd year. And we're rotating her through a cycle, everything that happens in the festival, so that as Jacquelyn gradually retires, we've got somebody in place. We're doing that now with board positions, key board positions, mentoring. Okay. Service volunteers, that's the big one. We're all getting older. How do we replace those service volunteers at some particular point? So we still have a lot of things to work on, but it's been a lot of fun. And I'm sorry, I've probably gone over time, Melinda. I'm sure it's the trouble when you get somebody who's an enthusiast for the local group.
Thank you very much, Jacquelyn. The great news is we're about to have a break and we can continue the discussion informally in the break. But let's take one question now before we take that break. Yes, please, Sheila.
It's not a question as much as a comment. I was in Thanksgiving this year.
Do you use the mic in your hand?
So just to say, I was in Cape Breton for Thanksgiving this year, and I just wanted to comment on the sense of pride that everybody that we came up against had in the Celtic Candles Festival. It was absolutely fantastic.
Well, thank you. And we get a lot of those kind of comments, and all the praise really does go to a few key staff people and the people in the communities. It sounds like we've had a very controlling effect as a board, but we've only managed boundaries, just to make sure that people didn't go offside.
Is there a burning question? I actually would love to just have your elaboration on the point of social enterprise. How do you see the festival being an example of that, and it's over break?
In part because of that distribution model on the revenue. There's new money that goes into the communities, and they're using that new money on purpose. They're re-roofing the hall, they're painting, they're doing all kinds of things with it. So that almost everything that comes in is redistributed, but on a non-profit collective basis, not to individuals.
That's wonderful. Please join me again in thanking Dr.